You are soaring up high in the sky, being one with your wingsuit and the wind, having the time of your life. The wind against your cheek feels amazing as you glide through the skies like a superhero. At the end of this roller coaster flight, you want to pull the parachute that will bring you to the ground safely. But a few seconds later, you realize the damning truth. Your parachute strap isn't working. You pull at it endlessly, but nothing happens. You think you might have some time to get it right, but you do not. The ground is rushing to meet you, and you try to glide a bit more to delay the inevitable. You are staring death in the eyes, and in its eyes you can see the lush green grass accelerating toward you. If nothing happens soon, you will hit the ground at 200 miles per hour. The death, when it comes, would be on impact. You try the parachute one last time and something miraculous happens. You've escaped death. But many are not as lucky. Recent data suggests that up to 10 people die each year from wingsuit flying, and this video explores some of those incredibly tragic stories. This video is a graphic account of some of the worst wingsuit jump tragedies, so viewer discretion is certainly advised. Sean Stanley Leary was a daredevil. He was the kind of guy who did crazy stunts purely for the thrill, and he chased those stunts as far as he could. Perhaps that's why he worked as a rugged film stuntman. By his mid-30s, Sean was already considered one of the most gifted climbers of his generation. He had climbed El Capitan dozens of times and set the speed record for climbing the Salathe Wall alongside Alex Honnold. He'd also set a new speed record on the Nose, a wall that many had previously thought was unclimbable. Stanley seemed almost invincible, but gravity, unfortunately, had other ideas for him. Stanley wasn't just a climber. He sought his thrills in other ways too. He was also a top wingsuit flyer, with a wealth of experience jumping from many famous exit points. Stanley was what we now call a base jumper, meaning he jumped from fixed structures such as buildings, antennae, spans, and the earth. Base jumping is much more dangerous than skydiving due to the extreme skill needed to navigate the short window of time between jumping and landing. Despite Stanley's years of experience with these kinds of jumps, base jumping is never a game you want to gamble with gravity. Before Stanley went on his ill-fated jump, his wife was pregnant. Some might decide to stop chasing thrills knowing they had a baby on the way, but not Stanley. On the 13th of March, 2014, he decided to go for another jump. As always, he wore his specially designed squirrel suit, which was supposed to help him glide better. He'd been in the area working on a film project and probably thought he'd squeeze in a wingsuit flight before returning to his family in California. Unfortunately, it would be his last wingsuit flight. The exit he chose was West Temple Peak in Zion National Park, Utah. He was alone when he made the jump, and no one witnessed his final moments. What we do know, through fellow flyer Dean Potter, is that Stanley apparently didn't see a notch in the mountain as he dove down, flipping it at high speed. This disrupted the aerodynamics of his suit and flight, sending him into gravity's trap. He was killed instantly upon impact. The tragic part is that his death wasn't even discovered until he was 10 days overdue. His wife raised the alarm, and his friends quickly realized what had happened. The search for his body was brief. He was found just 300 feet from the top of the peak. He likely lasted under 10 seconds before meeting his end. In the end, gravity claimed its revenge. James Jimmy Richard Pouchard was one of the legends in the world of wingsuit jumping. He had completed over 500 base jumps and 5,000 skydives. By the time of his death, he had been jumping for over 20 years. He was such an accomplished jumper that he owned his own jumping equipment and instruction company called Apex Base Jump. He was the kind of guy you'd think was too experienced or too careful to ever be outmatched by gravity. But one day, Jimmy's luck was tested in a big way. When wingsuit accidents happen, people often think they're inevitable. What can you do if your parachute develops a fault mid-flight? What if the same thing happens to your backup parachute? In such cases, there's nothing you can do but accept your fate. However, that's not what happened to Jimmy. Despite all his experience, he brought misfortune upon himself by jumping without a pilot chute, the small parachute that helps deploy the main one. This wasn't intentional. Jimmy simply stepped out of the plane without the pilot chute and only realized the mistake when he'd reached for it and found nothing. Without the pilot chute, it's nearly impossible to deploy the main parachute correctly. But Jimmy had no choice. He deployed the main chute and braced himself for the worst, rushing toward a fatal collision with the ground. Then, just 4 seconds before impact, the main parachute finally deployed properly, and he managed to navigate to safety. He had narrowly escaped death by gravity. Right? Well, that's what you'd think. On the 7th of January, 2022, a few years after that close call with the pilot chute, Jimmy took a jump from a site on a mesa above the Colorado River known as Super Gorgeous, so named for its beautiful view of the Castle Valley and the Colorado River. A satellite messaging device he had on his person detected an impact, triggering the transmission of a signal requesting help. Pouchard's companion, who remained at the top of the cliff, also activated a satellite messaging device requesting emergency assistance. Jimmy was later located on a steep talus slope about 1,000 feet below his jump point and about 700 feet above the Colorado River. Helicopter medics were dropped off nearby and hiked to him, where they confirmed he was deceased. He had outrun his end once, but destiny, or gravity, caught up with him in the end. He was 55 years old. Dwayne Weston, like Jimmy and Stanley, was an accomplished cheater of death. Some might say he had conquered it. In 2002, he won the world title in base jumping and was regarded as one of the most skilled wingsuit flyers of his generation. He was the one person everyone thought was too skilled to fail. His abilities were near immaculate. He served as the president of the Australian Base Association and was one of the first base jumpers to incorporate acrobatic stunts into his jumps. He was the king of badasses, with a thriving career outside of base jumping. Before his fateful encounter with gravity, he was hired by Boeing Defense, Space and Security to work on classified projects developing satellite software. On the 5th of October, 2003, Weston began the day with high hopes. He was scheduled to fly over the Royal Gorge Bridge near Canyon City, Colorado. It was meant to be a glorious jump, once again proving to the world that Weston was the best base flyer of his generation. Instead, it turned into a grisly tragedy that gave spectators nightmares for years to come. Weston was supposed to attempt the jump alongside fellow skydiver Jeb Corliss. Weston would fly over the bridge, while Corliss would fly under it. Before the jump, Weston told Corliss, "Whatever happens, happens." A brave attitude, sure, but one can't help but wonder if Weston would have been so bold had he known how things would go. The issue with the jump was that it wasn't technically a base jump, even though Weston had packed only base jumping equipment. This meant he hadn't packed a reserve parachute, just the pilot chute and the main chute. This decision would prove fatal and was technically illegal, which caused trouble for the pilots flying the plane after the incident. Weston stepped out of the plane and off he went toward the bridge, flying at 120 miles per hour. He was in his element, soaring through the air. And then it hit him. He'd gravely miscalculated his distance from the bridge. It happened in less than a second. One moment he was flying, and the next he struck the railing of the bridge, snapping one of his legs off. This occurred in full view of the crowd. From that moment, Weston's fate was sealed. He tried to deploy his parachute, but it wasn't enough to break his fall. He plummeted 300 feet, landing on the rocks below, where he bled out as everyone watched. Gravity had claimed yet another victim. Wingsuit flying looks like something out of an action movie. You're gliding through the sky, skimming past mountains at ridiculous speeds, and feeling invincible. But here's the kicker. Gravity always wins. No matter how skilled you are, no matter how many jumps you've done, gravity is patiently waiting for that one small mistake. And sometimes that mistake is all it needs. Imagine this. You're flying at 100 to 140 miles per hour, just inches away from rocky cliffs and trees. At those speeds, misjudging a turn by just a couple of feet can turn your wingsuit from a flight suit to a body bag. In fact, a study in 2016 found that wingsuit base jumping had a fatality or serious injury rate of 1 in every 500 jumps, a chilling statistic that makes even seasoned skydivers raise an eyebrow. Remember Dwayne Weston and Jimmy Pouchert? Both experts, both pioneers of the sport, and both tragically killed during wingsuit jumps. These guys were as good as it gets, and even they couldn't outfly fate. As a saying in the community goes, the mountain doesn't care how good you are. In the end, wingsuit jumping is a battle between you and the forces of nature, and unfortunately, gravity is undefeated. Sure, it's exhilarating, but the reality is, in the long run, gravity usually has the final say. Thank you for watching. In this video, we saw 3 wingsuit legends lose to gravity. And now our question is this: would you ever take on gravity with a wingsuit yourself? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons, and see you in the next one.